Hi, hello. Welcome back to Myself on Purpose, the podcast. Today we'll be talking a little bit about pressing emotions. Um, so I recently saw a clip of two friends, I think, who are on, I think, just therapeutic healing journeys individually. And so they were having a conversation, and one of the friends asks the other friend, um, how did you process the death of your father? And the response was, I don't think I did. Uh, that shit hit me like a ton of bricks, first of all. I kept watching because I'm actually in a season of grief myself. And so I was curious, to hear more about why not and, whether or not this guy was going to change that. But so, yeah, the response. Um, so I keep watching, and there's a little bit of context there, right? We've got this adult, and apparently his father passed when he was younger, a teenager, and he goes on to share that he didn't really feel like he had the space to process the death of his father. And prior to him passing, he didn't feel like he had the space to really be curious about his father or talk about him, because his father had been an inconsistent figure in his life up until that point, and he recognized that his father wasn't the best person to his mother as far as treatment goes, and so he didn't talk about him. He just didn't talk about his dad. It would make his mom like sad and bitter, and so he just avoided it, right? And he thought that it was his way of kind of holding space for his mom and showing solidarity to her. And he thought bringing up my dad, even if it's for me, my benefit, you know what I mean? And it's the fair thing to be able to do. Um, I don't want to hurt my mom. So I just didn't. Right. And so goes on to then connect the dots that so when he passed, I didn't process that either because again, there was no space for that. Right. And I sat with that. It was a pretty short clip. I sat with that for a while, was not expecting at all for me to have the reaction that I had from seeing it. And I think it, oddly enough, resonated with me. Um, I can remember feeling like there wasn't space for me to inquire or be curious or talk about my father growing up as well. So I grew up being raised by my mother. She was my sole provider and primary caretaker for all of my life. And so I did still, spend time with my dad and visit him occasionally and things like that. He was still, kind of in my life. But um, for all other intents and purposes, like my mom is who raised me. Um, and yeah, so when I was younger, I felt, you know, like there just wasn't space. And not that she ever told me directly, like, you don't talk about him, don't bring him up. I understand that that may be the case for, other people, but that was never the case for me. It's just kind of something that I came to understand. Her body language would change when he would come up in conversation, her tone of voice would change. And I don't think I had the words or the vernacular for it at the time when I was younger, but um, she had physiological responses. And I could see that there was some unsettled feeling there. Um, whether it might be frustration or something else, but definitely unsettled and kind of unmanaged, undealt with. I don't know that she had tapped into that and really healed. I think things were still actively happening as I was a child that would like anger her, maybe things that I wasn't even privy to. But, anyways, it was very tangible, right? The shift that it caused for my mom. And so I just tried to avoid that by all costs. And I thought um, it was the loving thing for me to do, right? Um, it was I thought, if I can see that my mom gets visibly upset when he comes up in conversation or I ask questions about him, the loving thing to do would be to not bring him up in conversations and not ask questions about him to her, right? Because I don't want her to think um, that I don't love her. And unfortunately, you know, that is the sense that I got. Um, there's kind of this other narrative happening simultaneously, right? Like the parent who stays gets the short end of the stick. They get the lash out emotions, they get the questions that are tough to answer or nobody wants to answer. They get the criticism, right? And all of these things. They get the feedback about how they're raising you or how they treat you. And this other parent kind of gets to remain absent, gets to remain without accountability and responsibility. Um, and they never get any criticism. And the short instances you might see them, you know, it's all love and joy and positivity, right? And you're thrilled about it. And all the other shit is what the parent who stays gets. Now, to be clear, that was never a conversation we had. She didn't technically say those things to me. I think these were like underlying feelings in the air, if you will. And I think, society is having more conversations about that feeling and that it can be a shared experience for some folks. Like there are other people out there who do feel that way, right? The parent who stays gets the shit, the tough shit, the hard shit. um and the absent parent, for whatever reason they're actually absent, um gets to miss out on all that, the shit. um So anyways, that I think was happening simultaneously, also helping, kind of shape my decision to just not talk about him because I didn't want her to feel like she was being punished and, yeah, all in all, I just kind of avoided it, right? And as I'm watching this clip, um, in the moment, it hadn't even triggered yet my thought about my own experience and why it resonated. I think I was just things were coming up and I was feeling and I was like, "Oh shit, what is this that I'm feeling?" Right? And one of the first images that I actually got wasn't about me at all. It was of like this room, this sealed room, right? And there is a mother and there's a child in the room and there's limited oxygen, right? And there's this like frantic mother who's kind of panicking and angry and bitter. And then there's this child who's trying to make themselves very small to ensure that there's all this other space left for the mother and everything that she's kind of carrying emotionally, right? And mentally. And to continue with the analogy of like oxygen, I imagine this child holding their breath as a sacrifice to allow their mother to use more oxygen, right? They say that when we are in a state of panic, we actually use more oxygen, right, than if we were kind of calm and settled. And so there's this parent who's kind of killing their child, so to speak, um, by simply being in the state that they're in, right? And this child is kind of self sacrificing. So there's that image, right? Ooh, tough image. But that's kind of what I saw in my mind and envisioned as I'm watching this clip of this man talk about like not having room to feel and think and process. And meanwhile, now he's an adult and his friend is asking him, "How have you processed the death of your dad?" And he's still saying, like, "I haven't, even yet. I have not." Right. And so I was like an eye-opening reminder, I think, that it's important to be self-aware, and it's important to work through your shit, because there are lots of times where I think we're carrying things and allowing things to impact us in ways that we don't even recognize they're impacting us. And sometimes it's also impacting the people around us, right? Um, So, anyways, this whole train of thought, right, from this clip, but it was important because it also led me to this next thought as I'm going down the stream of thinking of like why it resonates with me, how I felt similar that there wasn't really space for me to talk about my dad growing up in my household, because I think that shifted. My mom put in some effort, right, to change, I think, how she would speak about my dad when she did. When I was younger, in the conversation, there might be a jab or two. But I remember being about 14 or 15. Um, and I was at rehearsal. I was backstage at rehearsal for a theater production that I was a part of, and was, having a conversation with my castmate in one of the dressing rooms. And I must have gotten like a text or a voicemail or something from my mom. And so I'm tending to that. And I remember thinking in that moment, like, wow, she's really changed the way that she talks about my dad when she does, right? It comes off a lot less mm, sour or spicy, Um, and I really appreciated that because it felt freeing. It felt like I had the freedom and the liberty to experience him and create my own opinions of him, right? Myself, without taking away from how I felt about my mom and my experience of her, right? It didn't have to mean that I loved her less because I had questions about him or I wanted to talk about him or I wanted to see him or whatever, right? And I just remember thinking, it's really cool that my mom is putting in effort, right, for this thing. So, my takeaway from that was just a reminder as I'm in my own grieving season to um, make space for myself and take space that I need, but also make sure that I'm not showing up in a way that encourages anyone else around me to shrink themselves or feel less or talk about less. Like, That's not how I want to show up in any at any stage or point in life, through any season. I don't want to show up in that way. I want to make sure that I'm taking space and making space, right? Like that is important for me. And so, yeah, that it was the timing of the clip was really important. And yeah, I think that this season presented a lot of opportunity for me to do that. One of the things I notice is I'm the most self aware I've ever been while experiencing a loss or a transition, because I have made reflection a part of my everyday life, right? And I didn't start that in this season. I started that several seasons ago, right? And have maintained that. But that has allowed me to it's given me a tool that I can use to kind of cope in a healthier way during this season. Um, and I think it's just a testament to the work. You know what I mean? Like doing the fucking work. The work that seems like it doesn't add up, the work that I don't really feel like fucking doing, the work that you don't get claps for, like that kind of work, right? The tough, monotonous, tedious shit, and life gives you opportunities to utilize the things that you learn from, right? And that's what I'm really noticing about this season and how it's been so difficult. Like it's a tough fucking season, and still I can see that the work I've been doing on myself is helpful, right? And it's productive and it's paying off. Yeah, so to the gentleman who hasn't taken the time or the space to process and grieve, I hope if he's seeing this, I hope, you make that space finally and find that time, create the time to process. I think um, it's important, it's critical that we process impactful moments in life, good or bad, good and bad, and anything in between. And for the rest of you listening in or watching, check on your people and check on yourself. Um, yeah, regular temperature checks with myself, journaling, like whatever reflection looks like to you, whatever a check in looks like for you, I say do it and create that. If you don't know, if I just said, what does check in look like for you so that you understand where you are right now and how you feel about something, and you don't know, you don't have a process that you go to or a place that helps you get there, I would highly encourage it. I would highly encourage finding something that works, that allows you to be honest and open and vulnerable, at least with yourself, about where you are and how you feel about something. Has been it has been key uh, on my journey of becoming whoever the fuck I am to become. Yeah, it's been key. Reflection is a huge part of that. So yeah, check on you, check on your people, and take space, make space. Friends, thanks for being here and tuning in. I hope that you will join me again soon. And until next time, whatever you do, do it on purpose.